and welcome to the Nomadic Women podcast, a place where we share the voices of nomadic women. We are on a mission, empowering women and showing the world that a life outside the box is possible and beautiful. There are so many different versions of nomadic living, stories that inspire us to dream, explore, and thrive. Listen in and let's learn and grow together. So, Danielle, welcome to the Nomadic Woman podcast. I am honored to have you here. Tell us where you are calling in from today.
Thank you so much for having me. I am tuning in from Michigan in a little city called Fenton.
Very exciting. Yeah, it's so interesting. Everybody's all over the place, and I just feel like it's a little extra piece of nugget. Now, a question I like to start at the very beginning is, what does nomadic mean to you?
For me, I think that has been a term that has brought clarity to something I've almost always felt. So it feels like, although we use it to maybe describe a certain lifestyle of maybe always moving or transitioning, it feels like the perfect definition of belonging everywhere and nowhere all at once. So that's really what it feels like to me, and always ever expanding and changing and moving, which I really appreciate.
Like that. Yeah. So you kind of said it's the expansion and the moving and things. But currently, you mentioned you're in a season of, I guess some people would say more stationary, or probably some people have said to you, oh, you're giving up the nomadic life or your lifestyle, which I believe is not true. It's just another season and a different era. But before you decide this trip, you or this path, I guess, you were living in an RV for 3 years. What made you want that life? I mean, you kind of touched on it in the question before, I guess, because it's like always been a feeling. But what made you want that life in the first place? And I'm also curious why you chose an RV and not the hype van that a lot of people chose.
Yeah. So I was in an RV for 3 years, traveling around the United States. I just entered this moment of stillness a couple months ago. So, yeah, that was amazing. What brought me into that was just everything kind of fell into place in the most perfect way. But the first thing that inspired me was a trip to Zion National Park. And that is a national park in the United States in Utah. And it was my first solo trip, just me and nature. I had been abroad alone. I had already gone to like Costa Rica and Thailand. But this was my first nature immersion, I would say. And I just remember that trip. I never felt more alive in my life than I did in the middle of those mountains. And I just knew on a deep level that I had to feel that way more of the time, and that my life needed to look like it needed to feel good to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then on that trip, I learned about van life. I never had even heard of that term before. So it was just the most amazing thing that happened. And then during that trip, the last few days when I was going home, the United States closed down because of COVID. So it was like a very interesting shift took place in my life all in that week of time, and it changed my life. And when I went home, I knew that I would never be the same again, and I wasn't. And then I kind of compiled the transition into RV life.
That
And
I like
go
that.
ahead, sorry.
No, no, no. But it's just it's like the perfect. It's like you needed that push. It's like almost the, I don't know, the universe was saying you, here's all the information you need to set you up for this next big change, not in the world, but also in your personal life coming up. But
I
we can
absolutely
see.
believe that. I believe the universe really did. Like it was just, and being able to feel and be in tune with something, I think that was already, happening in a way as well. So I feel very grateful for that. So yeah, now I'm just kind of getting flooded with the memories of that trip, which are just so, so precious. And being able to go back there in the RV a couple years later, having really did the
Mhm,
thing that I said I was going to do, was absolutely just a beautiful, beautiful moment for me, full circle moment. So, okay, why RV over van life? Really good question. So, the biggest answer is I have a 20-pound giant Maine Coon cat
mhm,
who needed a lot of space, and he was like 9 years old at the time. So his litter box and place to like rest, and on top of having other pets, was really important to me. And the idea of doing that with a long haired cat in a really small space was a really big jump. On
mhm,
top of, I didn't want to have to learn everything from scratch. I didn't have very much carpentry experience
mhm.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
So to build out a van felt really intimidating to me, versus upgrading an RV felt a little bit more in my wheelhouse of
Mm,
something I could do. On top of learning new things, like I had never towed anything or even lived in an RV, but I definitely have never built a van. So
mhm,
between the space that I felt I needed for my cat and the skills I was most comfortable with learning, that was an easy, I think, compromise. And then the time frame. I was interested in really moving forward quickly, and the idea of building out a van for a year just didn't feel like that would fit what I needed at the time. So the RV thing, for some reason, towing didn't scare me as much as building a van, which I actually think building a van might have been easier. But
well, I guess it's the towing part is definitely the advantage in the US where everything is a little bit more broader. It's just I think for me, I always count, even though I did grow up in Canada, but it's still this European thing for me where it's like you don't with those let's say American RVs, you don't want to drive on the European roads. They're just so much tighter. Even like I have a caravan, and sometimes that is like, okay, it's on the edge where I would feel comfortable just you know, with the narrowness of it. But I mean, if just, if, especially with your cat, it does make a lot of sense why you chose an RV. And sometimes it's the it's like what we feel comfortable and what we don't. It's like with an RV, you had all the plumbing, you had all the electricity. It's like it's not only building, the kitchenette out of few pieces of wood. It's a lot more that goes into it. But so, you know, redecorating does, in the first sense, a little less intimidated, kind of. So that
yeah,
makes
it did feel
sense.
that way. I did end up upgrading the electricity to solar so that I could be completely off grid, which was really helpful in the west coast of the states. There's a lot more dispersed camping. The narrow roads I found to be very, very true on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not do much camping at all. I will not be towing those roads. No, thank you.
Yeah.
That was scary. So, yeah, it was amazing. It was the best 3 years of my entire life. I am very interested in doing it again. I would transition into a van versus towing, I think, with the next chapter.
But
Um,
yeah, it's just how you grow kind of as well. You grow from one experience and now you're like, okay, now I know what I even need or what, it's a lot of the times people build out vans, but the layout is completely, this is not even works for me. And they, initially thought, and
mhm.
those are, I think, things now better as well with the 3 years kind of that you experienced there. What did you love the most about this RV life? Did you have that, the feeling that you described at the beginning? Did you have that again and again, where you're just so in nature and kind of the landscape just impressed you, or what inspired you the most?
Yeah, absolutely. The landscapes for me for sure. I'm really big on nature and hiking. So that was the big motivation for me was I wanted to see all of the landscapes that the states had to offer, which I pretty much did do that. So I really feel very grateful to be able to do that or to be able to have done that. So that continued to inspire me. And then being able to be in more dispersed camping, I wasn't in campgrounds, so I wasn't surrounded by people. I was very much like in the middle of the desert with like 10-foot cacti surrounding me, like you couldn't see anything else. It's just like you and nature. And that was the most incredible part of it all is doing that over and over again and being able to sit and meditate and really feel the earth. I don't know. This sounds silly, but it just
Yeah,
that's what it
yeah.
was for me is like in the beauty.
Mm,
It's like every single place expanded me more and more. It
mm,
just felt like we're all a part of nature. We're all one. We're all part of
mm,
the earth. Like no matter what, whatever, at the end of the day, that is part of us. And so
mm,
to see each landscape and know that I'm connected to this landscape in one way or the other, even just being here, and the creation of all of this. The
mm,
fact that I'm here in this moment, in this time, viewing this landscape, and then being able to be in a different place whenever I wanted. So the flexibility of going where I'm called
mhm,
versus having to structure that. Just it was just such a freeing thing when you're living maybe a little bit more in a traditional lifestyle. Life can get in the way of being called and like your inspired action and your impulses to like, just go to California because it feels good. Like, well, I got to work and, I got to, it's like, well, and although I still worked, I had everything with me. So I would just go,
mhm,
I got to work Monday, but I'm going to work in California versus, wherever I was before. So I just never felt more in tune with myself than in those times. And being able to now know what it feels like to be in tune with myself is a new gift that I'll always have from that experience.
no, yeah, you're speaking right from my heart, and I think it's so important that I think a lot of people they just don't know how they actually truly feel because especially and let's say even in a city or a small town you have so many different energies around you, that all the different people, all the different the ads, the whatever, there's always certain balances, and once you kind of have found that once that inner calmness of yourself, okay, this is actually my energy, or why am I reacting to this in a certain way, this is actually not in tune with myself. I can't even hear myself because of all the different things going around me. That is a truly valuable lesson, and just to be able to feel that, and then even like you said, you did work and you did have those influences, but then you still had that that time, that liberal time to take away. And I think even that might be something for, it's just that time with yourself is so important. And
It's
actually
so important.
communicating that with the people around you that are in your bubble or that are living with you, that it's okay, this is, even if it's an hour, this is my hour. Don't interrupt me. Like, I need to feel myself. Like, to some that might sound stupid, but it's probably the most valuable thing that you can do, because how else can you articulate what you really want? Or are you just following the herd?
Mhm. Absolutely. I just felt like I could hear myself for
Mm-hmm.
the first time. And it took a little while to sort through all the noise, like you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about, like the chatter of the like family. Like even when I first got away, that stuff still echoed for a little while. And it took a minute before it all kind of settled. And I was like, that's me. This is me. And yeah, what a beautiful thing to know.
Yeah, or even like you said, the beliefs of the other people. Is that my belief or is that their belief?
Mhm.
I can imagine, especially if it's probably like the first. I'm just associating, but I think when you said, I'm going to buy an RV and I'm going to tour around the US, you probably had a few, okay, you're crazy
Mhm.
moments from your outside and
Oh,
until
absolutely.
they understood, okay, wait, she's serious about this.
And even then, I mean, I think they all expected, when is this? It was for a while before they were like, oh, I don't know when she's coming home.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first thing everyone said was like, "But you're not even a good driver."
Well, I'll just learn to be.
I know. I said, well, hey, other people do it.
Yeah.
Other people tow things. There's no reason that I can't learn to do it. So,
So
yeah.
did you end up visiting? I'm just curious myself. Did you end up visiting all the states? Well, except
Um,
Alaska and Hawaii, but
I actually did get to go to Alaska, not in my RV, but
okay.
I met my best friend on the road. She's also a nomad and she has an Airstream, and she towed her Airstream through Canada all the way to Alaska because she is brave and amazing. And so I flew up there. I was like, I love that for you. I'm going to fly, meet you there. But no, I did not get to go to all 50 states. I went to 28. So almost all 50, but I was a slow traveler. So I wanted to see all the landscapes. So I did get to see pretty much all of the like different landscapes that the states have to offer. So I did accomplish that part.
Well, that's I mean, if that that was your goal, and I think the landscape was probably one of the original things that inspired you. I think that's beautiful though, because it's we do forget that the U.S. has so many different areas from for or desert to forest to whatever else there is in between.
Yeah, there is a
Like,
lot.
yeah. So you mentioned before, and I'm just curious. It's always a very popular question. You worked while you're on the road, obviously.
Mhm.
What, if you don't want mind sharing, what did you do and how did you integrate that into your life?
Okay, so I am a licensed mental health clinician in the state of Michigan in the US. So I'm a psychotherapist. I have my own private practice. So I through that, I contract with a company here in Michigan that helped me like with the insurance and like the business aspect of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was still able to continue doing that. I was already doing that prior to transitioning into living in an RV. So I continued that. I was able to do it remote, which was amazing. So utilizing Zoom for that, as well as having my own private practice and branching out into other forms of life coaching and wellness centered practices. I was able to utilize those things to like fund my lifestyle, and that's what I still continue to do.
It's actually, I just had this moment because you just said you did it over Zoom, but it's at the same time, it's like it was the perfect time to do it because everybody was like hopping onto Zoom at that point anyway. So it wasn't even if you would have stayed at wherever you in Michigan you were before, you would have still had to do it over Zoom.
Yep.
So it's kind of ironic that you're like, no, I'm just gonna move my house as well, but it just worked out in a perfect way. And I love
Yep.
that for you that you just kind of, in a way, have already, found something beforehand that
Mm-hmm.
you didn't have that moment, oh my God, how am I gonna earn my living? You were just like, well, I can take this with me and do it from everywhere. And you obviously love it. And I think even this whole let's say the past 3 years were probably like a journey for yourself and you in a way even though you did a let's say you went to the school and you probably took a lot away that you could have you applied to your clients, is that how you would say, or
Yep.
yeah, that you yeah, I like that.
Yeah. I was so fortunate that that all fell into place. I knew before, because the reason that Zoom was allowed to be utilized obviously had a lot to do with COVID.
Mhm.
Um, but I knew before on a deep level that I would be traveling because I'd already done some international travel. So for everything to fall into place as it did, I felt very lucky. And a lot of my clients didn't know that I traveled full time because it always looked like I was always in the same place, quote
Mhm,
unquote, to them because I was always in the same room. My room
mhm,
was just always in a different place.
mhm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I guess, and that also might have been an advantage of an RV, that you could kind of structure it in a way where it wasn't obvious right off the get-go. Whereas,
yes.
in a van, you're like, okay, you're in a van. Every you see that, like,
Yeah. And that can be a little distracting. I think for the people who work with me based on who I am, more of the life coaching thing, that's not as distracting versus my clients who are more insurance referrals.
mhm,
That's a little bit more clinical based. So to
mhm,
have your therapist in a different space every time you see them might be a little bit challenging, I think,
yeah,
to build that basis. And another point for the RV that you bring up that I knew at the time that I forgot to mention is that I really wanted the designated office space. In a van, there's a lot of dual spaces, which is
mhm,
awesome. But with the work that I do, some of it can be heavy because I work with people who experience a lot of trauma, depression. Some people feel suicidal, and that can sometimes be a little bit wearing, just
mhm,
uh, as a human being. And so to have that separate space was also important to me to be able to like keep my room, like
mhm,
keep my work in my room, and then
yeah,
go to a different part. So
yeah. Just keep the energy there, and then even you probably have a lot of different files and other stuff and structures that you obviously needed to have in
yeah,
place for that type of work. No, that makes sense that it's just like different kind of closed energy and but you kind of in a way you after these 3 years you're obviously not sick of traveling and you love the lifestyle, but what made you then kind of tradition or adjust it again into a different this station, or let's say at one place type of situation?
yeah. Absolutely. It was a big adjustment to get an apartment and enter into this year of stillness. This is just a temporary 12 months for me to kind of land on my feet, kind of, sort of, is the idea.
Mhm,
I Living in an RV was amazing and I miss it and I would love to do it again tomorrow, today. But I wanted to be able to prioritize my family relationships just with some transitions. My sister had another baby. My mom's getting older, things,
mhm,
happen. So I wanted to prioritize my family relationships for a year because I know that my next big adventure is going to be international travel. And it's not going to be so easy to visit home. When I was in an RV, I visited about twice a year, which was still not very much compared to like living around the corner from my family all the time. So this is the year of prioritizing family relationships, and Michigan is not somewhere that's easy to live in an RV. There's not
mhm,
anywhere that there's not very many places that you can live in an RV year round because of the weather. You're from Canada, so I'm sure you can
mhm,
imagine like winter is not really doable for like living in an RV. And then my family lives in the city, so nobody had a big enough driveway for me to
mhm,
park my RV. So it wasn't easy for me to come home with my RV. It just
mhm,
wasn't doable for a long period of time. So
mhm,
I was willing to just transition out of it and be in an apartment for that year and just kind of re-enjoy things that RVs don't have, like, or
mhm,
my RV didn't have,
mhm,
like a dishwasher and a washer and dryer. And RVs have them, mine didn't. But so to just kind of land on my feet, prioritize family relationships, and then get ready for international travel. I want to do that for at least a year because once you're out of the States, it's easier to travel
mhm.
versus coming back and forth.
Yeah. No, I want to touch on one thing. You keep mentioning this year of stillness. Why do you call it the year of stillness?
So I guess because in the RV, I was moving every 14 days. I
Mm-hmm,
had like a new outside.
mm-hmm,
And so it's only been a couple months and I'm already kind of like, it's the same thing every day. So I have to remind myself not to like, um, I guess, forget that
mm-hmm,
stillness is important. I think
mm-hmm,
about like mental health sometimes as a snow globe, and that when we do a lot of changing and growing and shifting, it's like shaking the snow globe up.
mm-hmm,
And that if you never let the dust settle or the snow settle, you never really get a clear picture of what's underneath.
mm-hmm,
And in the last 3 years, there's been a lot of shaking. I've shifted, I've changed, I've expanded, I've gotten new ideas, and I want to see what's underneath. And if I keep moving, I think I'll just keep changing. And so I just want a second to just be where I'm at, be who I'm at, who I am, and like reconnect with people. And that just feels like that's what this is for me. It's not stop traveling because I've already, in the couple months I've been here, I've already been to two different states and Canada. So I've still done a lot of traveling, but the stillness of like being in the same place with the same grocery store, like I think that's another thing people forget about. It's the little
mm-hmm,
tiny things. Like I was in a different grocery store every time I grocery shopped. I was driving in a new city every time I turned around. And there's so much beauty in that. And there can feel like mundane in the predictability of like the same grocery store. And
mm-hmm.
so to remind myself that this is a gift in and of itself. So I guess that's what this feels like to me. It's just that year of stillness.
Well, I like that. I like that a lot, and especially with the snow globe, you are right because it's either we expand or either we grow in a way. Like we have to have that time to settle and to be like, okay, well, what are my next steps? And especially even now you said with family or the people that are part of it, how do they react to the new you in a way? Because you've grown, they've grown, maybe not so much sometimes, or but it's still like it's kind of like exploring those relationships in a new way as well, and
Mm-hmm.
taking them out of their comfort zone, but you being pulled in and kind of, yeah, like you said, in a way figuring out what is actually next. And I think sometimes we do forget that family is important, whatever context family means to you. If it's you know, your chosen family or family, that it's in a way that yeah, those connections are valuable, and it's we do have to prioritize them in a way too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And finding that balance of like loving and keeping those relationships and loving and keeping the new relationship that I
Mm-hmm.
formed with myself, and finding that balance for sure. And yeah, about how I love how you mentioned like seeing how they react to the new you, and for me too, putting the new me up for that challenge of like, yeah, it's one thing to be calm, cool, collected, positive, inspired when you're in the middle of nature without anybody around. Yeah, who's going to ruffle my feathers?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody. Versus when you're in the mix of, family or friends, or, you know, there's that opportunity to say, like, hey, no, I get to take this new version of me into this, which is a brand new experience. So that's also been really fun.
Yeah. And even like you said, but in a way, challenging yourself in this settled life. It's like, okay, well, it might be the same grocery store, but what happens if I go left around or right around? Or, it's like maybe even enjoying this, like the mondaneness of it, but at the
Mhm.
same time seeing the beauty in the little things. Or uh, maybe now you with your the landscape photography. I know I'm guessing this is just a wild guess, but I'm probably guessing you have one spot you always go to, and even seeing the changing, I don't know, sunsets or sunrises or the changing seasons in that one place also has its magic in a way. It doesn't even need to be like a place, you know? So it's like if you are in a place for a year, you can make so much out of it. But we often forget when we are in this flow that maybe that is also important.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
Um, you so you mentioned that landscape, and you also mentioned something about photography and international. Like, what are your plans for the rest of this year other than connections, and what are your plans after? Fill me in.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I'm continuing to work on putting my photography into a gallery of collecting all of the photos I've taken in the last 3 years. They're all on my or not all of them, but a lot of them are on my Instagram. But I would like to set that up to either where half of them are like free digital downloads, just so that I can share the beauty with others, and then also possibly seeing if people would like to buy prints of those. And so continuing to work on that. I love that you mentioned the seasons. That is one thing about Michigan specifically is there's four very distinct seasons. So I've loved to experience spring. I haven't experienced spring in the Midwest in a long time. So yes, continuing to work on my photography and building my brand with my wellness. I would like to continue to build that up as well, the private practice part of it all, just to expand and bring a little bit more of myself and my personality into my treatment with others and just my personal experience. That is one thing that as a therapist, it's very much them focused versus like life coaching. There's a little bit more of a flow, a little bit more of a personal feel to it that I really enjoy. So being able to shift my focus on building those things as well. And as far as travel goes, I am currently trying to book a my very first backpacking trip. So I've done a lot of day hikes, but I've never done an overnight backpacking trip. So I'm hoping to go to Isle Royale National Park in Michigan and they have like a 44-mile around the island that you can backpack. I'm hoping to do it in 4 days. So I'm hoping to do that before the summer's over. Currently looking up the permits and everything last week with my friend Sarah. So I'm very excited about that. And then the international piece. So I'm hoping in 2025 I don't plan to renew my lease here at the apartment. I plan to get rid of everything or store it and then do some international travel. I am feeling very, very drawn to Australia. So I don't know if I'll start or end there, but I know that will definitely be part of the experience. And I hope to, during that time, to work on my life coaching, my photography, and then doing a little bit of the work exchange. I don't know if you're familiar with a lot of like the work away programs.
I've
I'm
done them
really
all.
Okay, yeah. Yes, I'm so excited. I think that they're amazing. Like what an amazing way to like be a part of a community, give back, learn a new skill. Like I mentioned, I'm not great at carpentry. I really, really want to do workaways that teach me new skills, like
Mhm.
living off grid, sustainable farming, carpentry. I'm just very excited to do that kind of thing. Staying at like elephant sanctuaries, just um, being able there's just like the world is so amazing and there's just so many things to experience and see. So I feel that the United States is wonderful and that I've seen so much of it that I'm so ready to experience the cultures other places and connect with communities and cultures and see what I can learn and give back. So very excited to do that next year if all goes as planned.
Yeah, sometimes it's like you said, if all goes to plan, but it's always nice to have an idea and, still kind of go with the flow, how things work. Because I think, know best that a week can change your whole life in a way.
Your whole life.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But, or it's one person or one moment. And I think, going, like having dreams is so important and just going after them. And it's you always kind of have to be in transition. Like if you
Mhm.
want to grow as a person, or you know you you change. And like you even mentioned, probably that's before the 3 years, as a licensed therapist, and you probably wouldn't have gone into this life coaching more. But
Mhm.
me as an outsider, I feel I like that you are. And I also like that because I mean it's you're changing like the system, because I mean over the years therapy has gotten more accepted, but a lot of the times, and I also like that you have the background of it, because there's a lot of people who call themselves coaches who, well, maybe shouldn't. It's I think it's just a term that gets so misused sometimes. And having a background, I think you probably have a few stories to say about that as a
Yeah,
in practice therapist.
absolutely. Well, and I guess anyone can call themselves a coach, I guess is the tricky part. So yeah, I do appreciate having the educations and having a current license to know that there's at least some evidence based around what I'm saying. Um, and I think coaches a lot of times they are coaching through their lived experience, which is really wonderful.
Oh, of course,
And
yeah.
understanding that what getting clear on who you, if you're picking a coach, understanding what the goal is,
Hmm.
because you guys might have different goals.
Hmm.
So
No,
I
no,
think
that
that,
actually is a very valuable lesson, and I think that is basically also goes back to the question, you have to kind of know yourself what you want out of it, and for what reasons are you attracted to this person? Like, what
mhm,
values do they have that you want?
mhm.
And yeah, be open, I guess, about the communication. Um, what do you have anything that you feel like you still want to share, that you have on your heart, that you want to share? Yeah.
Um, I would just say, like, for anyone listening and tuning in, to just find what feels good to you and follow that. For us, that's going with the flow of life and traveling and moving and expanding. And that can look different to everyone all the time. Like you mentioned, we're always moving, we're always changing. I heard an analogy once that, life is like a train and we're on the tracks. You're either moving forward or you're getting hit. Like we are always expanding, um, but also taking that moment to let the dust settle sometimes and see what's underneath. So, yeah, I appreciate that, everybody, for listening. I appreciate you for having me. I don't really think I have anything else that I can think of unless you have any other questions.
I think for the moment I don't, except a few rapid fire questions, because I just like at the end just to kind of, add a little bit of fun. But before we do that, tell everybody where they can find you at the moment.
Okay, so I am currently on Instagram and TikTok at Oh Hey There, it's Danielle. I think we'll provide probably some kind of link or
Yeah,
something.
I'll put it all in the show notes. So yeah, the
Okay.
description below. But
Yeah, I'm
perfect.
pretty active on Instagram almost every day. And then TikTok, I try to be at least a couple times a week.
And then obviously, say all your other the programs that you're working on will obviously also be launched at some point on your Instagram or TikTok. I'm sure you'll share it there then whenever you're ready to go out in the world with.
Absolutely. Yes,
All right.
I have some links on my Instagram that will all be launched. And stay tuned for that for sure.
Now, coffee or tea?
Coffee,
Summer or winter?
summer,
Pizza or pasta?
pasta.
Mountains or beach?
Ugh, hardest question of all. Um, Mountains,
Sunset or sunrise?
sunset,
Slow pace or fast paced travel?
slow paced.
Traveling by plane or road trip?
Um, Road trip, but all the cooler places I want to go to are only available by plane right now. So that is a hard one.
I mean, you did do a 3 year long road trip, so it's valid that you wanted to age. Suitcase or backpack?
Backpack,
Hotel or Airbnb?
Airbnb,
City or countryside?
countryside.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. And it was so lovely to meet you and for you to just share the value and your story. And I really enjoyed us chatting.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was an honor being here.